The State of Real Estate with your host, Gerry Lantaigne.
Welcome to the State of Real Estate. I'm your host, Gerry Lantaigne. This week's episode, we're going to discuss what buyers need to do before and during the process of buying a home. First, we're going to get to the market report. And this market report for this episode covers the month of July, and we're going to compare the statistics from July 2019 to July 2020. And the statistics are brought to you by the Lakeland Association of Realtors. New listings this July are down by 18% from last July. So there are fewer new homes for sale this month being put on the market than there were last year. The total inventory of homes for sale from last July to this July is down by a whopping 42%. So there are a lot fewer homes on the market this year than there were last year in July. Now, the actual number of homes that sold is up by over 43%. And that's just really incredible compared from July 2019 to July 2020. I mean, considering what we're going through as a nation with COVID-19, it's remarkable that the sales are 43% higher from last year at the same time period. So this is a good time to sell. It is a seller's market. Unfortunately, it puts buyers at a bit of a disadvantage. You might have to make quick decisions, and when you do, you might be facing multiple bids. So that's the market report, and it is a seller's market.
The State of Real Estate with your host, Gerry Lantaigne.
Welcome back. This is the interview portion of the show. And today's guest is someone we've had before, Miss Sharon Bussa. Sharon, welcome back, and thank you very much.
Gerry. Yes, nice to be here.
Yeah, excellent. And we will be discussing, as I mentioned earlier, what a buyer needs to do when buying a home. So, Sharon, what is the first thing that a buyer should do when they think they want to buy a house?
Of course. Well, besides just sort of getting your criteria in line, one of the very first things I recommend is going and seeing either a mortgage broker or your bank and finding out what exactly you can even afford. Because there's no sense going in at a higher price.
Once you establish that proper price range, and then you've chosen the criteria that you want, how do you
and
go
you've
about...
got your pre-approval at the bank.
Yes, pre-approval.
Okay,
That's
so
what
those
you...
are our next 3 things. Yeah.
Okay. How do you start to find the right properties?
All right. Well, so...
And you've already chosen your... I want a 2-bedroom near a school.
Okay, so then you want to figure out who do you want to work with. And you maybe want to interview a few agents in the area and see whether or not you're compatible with them, whether they're going to listen to your needs and wants and set you up on our search engine and seeing what properties are actually out there available in your price range.
Okay, and then these searches can be automatically emailed.
Absolutely.
And give the clients a chance to make decisions on which homes. See, and that's what I always find too, because so now you ask the realtor to start sending you stuff, and the realtor has an idea what you want, but by sending stuff and you go yes no, all of a sudden you're fine tuning what the client
your wish
needs.
list.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, because exactly we start looking and you're going, you know what, I really don't want to be that close to my neighbors, or you know what, I can't have another half an hour on my day. Like I physically can't do that, so I need to be closer to my work. And so you start to really narrow that down, and then we can tweak it from there and get what we're really looking for. Yeah,
the different neighborhoods or different types
of
areas.
Exactly. Maybe you get looking and you go, you know what? No, I want to be on the other side of town. So yeah.
And actually, too, school becomes an important issue because there are certain schools that have certain benefits. There's French immersion schools,
Absolutely.
And if you're not in the catchment area, your kids can't go to that school generally.
Or they can't grab the bus or whatever, right?
Okay.
So
Yep. So that's good. So then the realtor can get out there and start searching out these properties and send you things and hone in on what you're really looking for. And once you did that, then we can, as a realtor, we can really start sending you the listings that you really want to look at and get better.
Exactly. And then from there, I always recommend people to go drive by the listing. So they can go by and see if they like it, see if they do like the neighborhood and
Right.
everything else before we ask for the appointment time.
Yeah.
And then once we have that, we can go through and see if it is truly going to fit your needs.
Just example.
Mhm.
I'm Bill, and I want to buy that house over there, Sharon.
Yes.
It's listed at 350, but I don't think it's worth 350. I
Right.
want to pay 325.
Okay.
So we put in an offer at 325. What happens when the homeowner's like, "What? 325? That's outrageously low."
Yeah, I was only going to go as low as 345. So we're a long ways apart. So that's where the negotiations do come in, and you have to, like I said, decide what can you take out, what can you put in to make those numbers come closer together. And then I always say to my buyers,
So then the seller takes the offer because we put the offer in. They've accepted to look at the offer,
yes,
and they're coming back and saying, "Well, 325 is too low." So they write a new number and send the
yes,
contract back to us.
yes, it's called a sign back. Yes.
Yeah, and now the onus is on the buyer now to make the choice of whether they want to accept that price or not.
Yes.
Okay.
And maybe, like I said, that you can try and find a way to meet in the middle, because if you're only a little bit apart, when you think of a mortgage being over a 20-year period, it's probably not that big of a deal to go, 1,000 or 2,000, a little bit more, and so you can sort of try and find that magic number for both, so we keep both parties happy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. We're going to stop for a little bit of a break.
Okay.
We'll be back, and after that, we'll discuss the steps that buyers need to do when working with a realtor.
The State of Real Estate with your host, Gerry Lantaigne.
Welcome back to the State of Real Estate. I'm with Sharon Bussa. Sharon, before we left, we promised that we would go through the steps that buyers need to do when working with a realtor. So there are a number of different documents to sign, and let's talk about, starting at the very first one, what would we do if a buyer came to you and said, "I want to work with you and I want to buy a house. I want to start seeing some homes."
Okay. So there's two documents right off the start that I like people to sign. First is working with a realtor, so they actually know what's involved. Because we can get into a client relationship, a customer service relationship, and also multiple representation.
And working with a realtor is its own little document. That does the realtor have to sign it as well?
We sign on behalf of our brokerage.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the client signs that too. So let's talk about what the working with a realtor discusses. I guess it gives the different options, and you were just about to start that.
Jerry, you and I both work for Sutton Group, Muskoka Realty, and so say you have the listing, the place that's for sale, and you're then working as a client. Like you're on the client side for the seller, right?
Oh, the seller. Okay.
The seller, because you've got the listing.
Yeah.
And I have, my friends are coming and they're wanting to buy that place. And so I'd be working with them, the buyers. But because we're at the same office, we now become into a multiple representation category.
Where our company is representing both the buyer and the seller.
And so again, I like to say, like, I'm still working in the best interest of my people, and you're still working in the best interest of your people.
Yeah.
But they just have to acknowledge that we both are in the same office.
Yeah. And that is a possibility.
That is
so this is something that might happen if they choose a home, and they have to be aware of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because we want to be upfront with people. We want to be honest. We want to be open. We want to tell them honestly what's going on.
Now there is a client.
Yes.
And there is a customer.
Yes.
Can you explain the difference?
So again, you're as a client, you're going to do a lot more research. You're going to make sure that they're really understanding what exactly they're getting into and what exactly they're purchasing. And as a customer service person, you might not give quite as many details. So maybe you say, like, there is cable, but you might not look into the internet. Right. Whereas the client privilege, I want to make sure I've checked off all the boxes. I want to make sure my client has really looked into everything, where you're sort of expecting the customer to do a little bit more on their own, right, and be a little bit more in tune of what they have to watch out for.
Okay. All right. So we've decided that's okay, and we signed the working with a realtor. What's the next document we need to think about?
So the next one would be the buyer representation form.
Okay.
And again, that is just saying that while you're looking for a property, say in the Muskoka area, that I'm going to represent you. And so I usually like to sign people up for about a 3-month period because there's not always a ton of things on the market at once. So it may not be the first week that we find the exact perfect home for you, right? So giving us that little bit of time to find the right property that meets your needs.
Yeah, so the buyer's representation gives...
Watching out for your best interests. So yes, we can then go with you to that property. That might not be on the multiple listing services, but we can go with you and represent you and make sure that we're crossing all the T's and dotting the I's, as they say, and make sure that you're getting the best deal.
Excellent.
And not getting scammed out of something, right?
Yeah, and then there's another section, the holdover.
Yes.
So explain the
again,
holdover,
that's
if you don't
usually
mind.
a period of time, usually in days, so like 30 days, 60 days, something like that. And that's if I showed you 10 properties, and then you go, yeah, that's not the one for me, and then you decide, you know what, the one that I saw, you know, the third one in, I want that one. I'm going to go back and I'm going to buy it because my expiry has passed on the deal.
Buyer's representation.
And so,
and the deal. Okay.
but then that's saying, you know what, because I showed it to you and you're in that holdover period, I should still be accepting a commission from that.
Confirmation of cooperation.
Okay, so that one is when you and I are working together and we're wanting to make sure that the buyer realizes what commission we're going to be accepting for the sale of that property and who's getting what kind of split. So if it's a 4% rate or a 5% rate, who's getting what portion of that?
It's called FinTrack. If you would mind explaining what FinTrack is.
So again, that's
and why it needs to be signed.
Why it needs to be signed. That is a document that's on the federal level, and
the government of
the
Canada.
Government, and so we need to track who's buying what, basically.
So financial
it's
tracking.
It's a risk management.
Okay.
So is how I would describe it. So I'm making sure that I have taken. I not only have I met you, or I try to meet you, who's my, like, I'm pretending you're my buyer right now.
Yeah.
So I have met you and I've identified you, and then I get a piece of identification from you, either a passport or a driver's license or something like that. Shows me your home address, and that whether or not you live here,
Canadian
and whether you are who you are. It's basically
yeah.
showing up who you are, and whether or not you're buying on behalf of a third party or for yourself. So it's all of these different levels that we have to check off and make sure that you are who you are, and that you're not buying for some activist group or what.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. So basically, the government, it's the financial tracking system of the Canadian government, because those are large dollars going through.
Absolutely.
And they want to watch out and look out for money laundering, money that came from illegal gains.
Terrorism.
Money.
But you know, there's reality to all of these things in our world these days. So those are the ways that we make sure that you are who you say you are, and we're making sure that you own the property that you're selling. Like all of those things are very, they're not minor details. They're major.
Yeah, that'd be terrible. I bought a property off a guy who didn't own it. Actually, you know what? That happened to someone I knew, but it was in another country. They bought a vacation property, and they actually bought a part of a national park they didn't know. So,
oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That didn't go so good.
No.
So let's briefly and quickly talk about the contract when you're buying a home. It is called an agreement for purchase and sale. Right. Now, you talked earlier about some of the things that are on it. Can you go through those again? Like you mentioned the closing day and the title search.
So basically, the offer of purchase and sale is
the contract.
It's the contract. It's the offer. And so it's the legal binding agreement between the two parties. So it starts off pretty basic with everybody's names, and then we go into addresses and what we're buying and the legal description of it, the price we want to pay, the deposit amount we want to put on there, and everybody's initialing each page. And as we flip through, there's the clauses of that's just protecting everybody. So proper insurance and inspections and all of the things that we need to do to make this a legal and binding agreement. And then we get down to, the closing date and the title search date. lawyers like to have a little bit of time to look into everything, so we usually make sure we have at least 7 days there for the title search. And we usually put in then in the what's called the Schedule A, our clauses.
Yeah, this is
And
interesting.
yes.
Yeah.
And some brokerages have a Schedule B, which is again a few more clauses, how they want the money sent to them, and different things might be in there. Whether or not your deposit amount's going into an interest-bearing account, those type of things can be there. A schedule, you can have C, D, E, F,
Well,
but
let's talk
we could
about
have the survey as a schedule.
Yeah. Let's talk about the clauses then, and what do they do? I mean, they're there to protect the buyer, right?
Yeah.
So,
and the seller too.
Okay, and it gives you, I mean, in a sense, it gives the buyer an option to get out of the deal if there's something they don't like, or if they find out they can't commit to their financing.
Yes. So a financing clause can be anywhere, typically from 5 to 10 days, depending on your bank or mortgage. But again, if you have that approval, then they just want to approve. Then the next step is just to approve the property you're buying, because the bank has a vested interest in it too. They want to make sure that you're not overpaying for something.
Yeah, you're not buying a $500,000 house that's worth $200,000.
Exactly. And because again, if they're loaning you the money and then all of a sudden you can't pay for sickness or loss of job or whatever, they want to be able to be paid back for that.
The 10-day thing. So basically, that buys the buyer 10 days to get their financing, and if they cannot fulfill that in that 10 days, they can get out of the contract and not be obligated to actually come up with the funds.
And then their deposit can be released back to them too.
Okay.
So we usually have a standard that way. There can be an insurance clause. So again, we've had flooding and stuff in Huntsville area, and some houses are
in the flood zones.
So you want to make sure you can get house insurance and not be paying a top premium for that.
And then you want to make sure the house was built right and built well, so you get a home inspection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a fireplace, and it might need a wet inspection for getting your house insurance too.
Which is an approval.
Yes, all of these things that we want to make sure we put into place. If you're buying a condominium, you want your lawyer to be able to look at the status certificate of the whole condominium corporation.
Make sure that they're not bankrupt.
Make sure they're not bankrupt, that they have enough money to put that new roof on next year, and maybe that there's no lawsuits against them too, right?
Like someone slipped and fell or something, and they're getting sued for everything that's in their bank.
Exactly.
What other kind of clauses, like standard ones, that are there to protect the consumer?
Okay, so, well...
I mean, because you want to put clauses in, but you don't want to put too many that you scare away the seller who says, "I don't know, my God, it's like 20 pages of clauses."
So we usually do. There's conditional clauses, and then there's warranty clauses. So things that are saying, you know what, the dishwasher that you saw here when we listed the house, I'm going to guarantee that that's working for you when you close your deal. And if 10 days before closing it stops working, well, then I'm going to give you a new. I'm going to buy one because I have to replace it.
It's in the contract.
So so there's warranties as well as conditions. So again, some things maybe look a little bit overwhelming, and they're really just, all in good faith, right? We want to make sure we're keeping both parties happy. A good one up here is a septic clause and a well clause. Making sure that there's enough water in the well to make sure not only you can run the dishwasher, you can have a shower and do your laundry.
Yeah, and then also, like you said, for the septic, to make sure it's big enough for how big the house is.
Yes, exactly.
How many
because
bedrooms?
Maybe it was a 5-bedroom house, but they put in a septic that's only good for 2 bedrooms.
Yeah.
So it's the amount of people, so to speak, that could live in the home that you want the septic approved for that amount.
That's great. And then after the fact, after the the sale's been done and we signed it off and everything, what kind of protection, aside from like just regular home insurance, what kind of protection can they get against the purchase of the home? And I'm talking about just different things, like say I bought a home and my garage ended up being half on my neighbor's, and my neighbor wants me to move it.
Right.
So what kind of insurance
When you go to your lawyer, because again, when you do an offer of this kind, you have to have a lawyer. And so your lawyer then goes through and does that title search that I was talking about earlier before your closing date. And that is making sure that the property lines are where we thought they were, that there's no liens against the house, like the carpenter that built the kitchen actually got paid for the job. And so we know all of these things from the lawyer's search.
Yep.
And in that, then the lawyer's going to offer you to get a title insurance. And that title insurance is exactly what you're talking about. Maybe you thought the property line was here and you built the deck over it. It's really 4 feet over that way. That piece of property, then that negotiation will be done through that title insurance.
Now, this is just a out there ballpark question. Is that something you would recommend to?
Absolutely.
Me too.
It's a small fraction of your purchase price.
I really strongly recommend that to my clients when they buy. For what it is a peace of mind that protects you probably better than even like a home insurance, you know?
Well, they're just different entities.
Yeah, there's different types of insurance. I mean, one's for if your house burns down and it gets flooded, but this one protects the title of the property itself.
Yes, and when computers were new, we were worried about somebody taking it literally out from underneath you, right? When the transactions were in limbo there before it changes from one name to the next.
By false identity or
false identities and things like
theft.
that. So again, all of those things are all covered in that title insurance, and they're very important things to establish.
Excellent. Well, that's great. Thank you, Sharon. That's really awesome. Can you tell them where you're from and a little bit of a contact?
Yeah. Again, Sharon Bussa at Sutton Group Muskoka Realty in Huntsville. My cell number is 705-783-8420. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you guys today.
It's a pleasure. Awesome. This episode's real estate tip is for buyers. Buyers, when you decide that you actually want to buy a home, before you start looking for homes, the first thing you should do is go to your bank or your mortgage broker and find out what your financing will get you. That way, you have a very good idea of what you're looking for and what you can afford and what you want. Instead of the other way around, when you go look at a house and go, oh my God, I want that house. And then you find out after that you can't get financing for that much. And it's such a disappointment. So do the reverse. Go talk to your mortgage brokers and banks first. That way, you know where you stand before you start looking. That is the real estate tip.